Today, Canon have announced the new R5 C. Now, this is a new video-first camera that has a huge amount in common with both the R5 and the Canon EOS Cinema cameras. Now, this is sitting just below the C70 in the Cinema range, but we've had our hands on a beta sample of this camera, and I have to say, this is an extremely capable camera. So first up, this is still a hybrid camera in the sense that it has some really great photo specs, but this is absolutely designed as a video first system. And that's very clear. As soon as you switch into the video mode, the menus, the layout, and everything about it has much more in common with the EOS Cinema cameras. This is a great tool for professional videographers, cinematographers, content creators, pretty much anyone who wants to create video. So let's talk a little bit about some of that spec. On the photo side of things, this is pretty much the same as the R5. We've got 45 megapixels, up to 20 frames a second in continuous shooting, dual pixel CMOS AF2 with IAF and animal AF. The main difference between this and the R5 in terms of photo is the lack of image stabilization in the R5 C. Now, of course, IS can be very helpful when shooting handheld video in a run and gun setup, but for cameras like this, I don't think it's actually a great loss. Most videographers that I work with, and certainly for me as well, outside of running and gunning something completely handheld, I tend to turn image stabilization off for video and use a gimbal instead. It also helps a lot with heat, which we'll talk about in a moment. Now, video-wise, like I said before, it's clear that this is a video-first camera, and it really behaves like one of those EOS Cinema cameras, right down to the menus, like I mentioned before. You can shoot in 8K 30p in RAW, and that's internal, and that goes up to 8K 60p in RAW when you're recording externally. Now, of course, you've also got beautiful high quality 4K video at 422 10-bit, and that's oversampled from 8K and looks so great. Now, you can shoot that up to 120 frames a second, and that's with no crop. And something which I noticed, which can be really useful, is that's with audio and AF enabled at high frame rate recording. It's also absolutely full of tools that pro videographers would want, like a waveform monitor, false color, as well as professional recording formats like Cinema Raw Lite, XF AVC, and of course MP4 as well. It's also able to shoot in HLG or Canon Log 3. Now, dual base ISO helps with low light, it gives you a much better end result, and something which is extremely welcome news is there's no time limit on recording time. The only limit really is on power and of course storage as well. Now, the R5 C takes the LPE6NH battery, and I've got to say it really does chew through these. I managed to eat through 2 of those batteries in just over an hour, but for a camera like this, I would actually imagine that using a single battery in the camera is probably the last resort. That almost feels like more of a backup option to me. You could certainly get the grip, which means you've got 2 batteries, but to be honest, I think unless it's a quick shoot or a very specific thing that you're filming, I would imagine this camera will normally be used with an external power source. That's certainly how I would look to approach it. And that way, you don't have to worry about power, and that means you don't have to worry about recording time limits or anything like that. Okay, so let's talk about something which I know is going to be a hot topic, pun definitely intended, and that's heat and overheating. Obviously, that was a big talking point with the R5, but you can tell as soon as you look at this camera that the R5 C has got a very comprehensive airflow system built in, which means it's absolutely not got a heat problem. I filmed in 4K, 120 frames a second, 8K, 30 frames a second for about an hour without any problems at all. And Canon actually confirmed that heat is just not an issue with this camera at all. Amazingly though, it's still weather and dust sealed, even with these big fans. Now, those fans and airflow system mean the R5 C is definitely a bit chunkier than the R5, but surprisingly, it's only about 30 grams heavier, and it's still really comfortable to use. I never felt like it was too big for my hands or anything like that. You'll feel right at home here if you shoot Canon. It's got the same LCD screen and EVF as the R5, which is not a problem because they are both very, very good. And otherwise, there's a nice big red record button on the camera, which you see on the EOS Cinema cameras, as well as things like a tally light, which is always very, very handy. It's got the same dual card slots as the R5, so you've got CF Express Type B and SD UHS 2. And while it retains the connections from the R5, there are definitely some added in here as well, so things like time code and the multifunction shoe. Now, this is a lovely camera to use for video, whether you're a content creator, professional videographer, or you want to use this for something like a bigger production as a B cam or as a smaller camera for certain shots. It obviously helps that it's got some great photo abilities as well, but it just is an extremely capable cinema camera in its own right, and it's got a lot going for it. Now you can check out the full spec by following the link down in the description. Any questions, of course, pop them down in the comments. We'll do our best to get back to you as soon as possible. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give us a like and subscribe for more. I'll see you in the next video, and as always, thanks for watching.